Welcome to The Explainer. I am so thrilled you're here today. We are taking an absolute powerhouse of a journey into the wild, weird, and honestly, endlessly fascinating world of animal behavior. We're drawing our insights directly from Tristram D. Wyatt's brilliant book, Animal Behavior, to really get under the skin of why animals do what they do. We're going to start right at the surface with observable behaviors. The stuff you can see with your own eyes. And then we're going to zoom all the way down into the microscopic machinery of nerves and genes before zooming way back out to explore the remarkable minds and cultures of the animal kingdom. It's going to be a wild ride.
Okay, let's dive into this. How on earth does a tiny wasp perform precise brain surgery on a living cockroach? It sounds exactly like the plot of a science fiction thriller, right? But this is actually a real, calculated biological mechanism happening out in nature right now. We are going to unpack exactly how this tiny insect completely hacks the nervous system of its prey. And I promise you, it's just one of the incredible, totally mind-bending biological mechanisms we'll uncover today.
So, here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're using a sort of behind-the-curtain approach today to zoom in on the biology and out on the culture. We'll cover 1. Decoding animal behavior, 2. The machinery of action, 3. Genes, environment, and development, 4. Animal minds and culture, and we'll wrap up with 5. The language of survival.
Let's jump right into Section 1, Decoding Animal Behavior.
Before we can really understand the complex internal machinery, we need a solid framework, and scientists use Tinbergen's 4 questions as a kind of master decoder ring. It's brilliant, really, because to truly grasp a behavior, you have to look at it from 4 distinct angles. First, function. How does it actually help survival? Like, say, black-headed gulls hiding bright eggshells so predators don't spot their nests. Then, development. How does it grow over an animal's lifetime? Think of a newborn mammal slowly learning its mother's unique scent. Next, mechanism. What are the immediate internal triggers, like sudden hormone releases that instantly prompt maternal behavior? And finally, evolution. What is the ancestral history here, like a burrowing owl literally mimicking a rattlesnake sound to scare off threats? Looking at the exact same behavior through these 4 lenses gives us the complete biological picture.
Moving on to Section 2, the machinery of action. We're zooming past the observable stuff now to look at the internal physical machinery, specifically nerves and hormones.
Picture the night sky for a second. It's the setting for this incredibly high-stakes evolutionary arms race between bats and moths, and it plays out literally like a mini true crime thriller. Bats are hunting using ultrasonic sonar, sound waves that we can't even hear. But moths, they've evolved specific ears just to listen in on the hunters. When the moth's sensory neurons transduce the soft sound of a distant bat into an electrical action potential, it alters its course early. It sneaks away. But if those same ears detect the rapid, super loud buzz of a bat that is actively homing in, the nervous system bypasses a simple turn. It instantly triggers the wing muscles to execute this chaotic, last-second power dive out of the sky to safety. And this nervous system communication is astonishingly fast. Check this out, 120 milliseconds. That is just a fraction of a second, and it's all the time it takes for the star-nosed mole to find, identify, and eat its prey. It uses 22 touch-sensitive fleshy rays right on its nose, and it devotes a massive amount of its brain just to processing those tactile signals. It literally has the fastest food handling reaction time of any mammal on Earth.
Okay, remember our brain surgeon wasp from the beginning? The jewel wasp needs a fresh cockroach to feed its larva. But a roach is way too big to just carry off, so what does it do? First, a sting temporarily paralyzes the roach's front legs. Just a brief pause. Then a precision strike. A second sting injects a highly specific neurotoxin cocktail directly into the roach's brain, specifically the walking command center. The roach isn't paralyzed, but it completely loses all free will. It just starts obsessively grooming itself. Then the tiny wasp literally takes the zombified cockroach by the antenna and walks it like a dog on a leash right into its burrow. Nature is wild.
And this brilliantly illustrates the contrast between our 2 major biological control systems. The nervous system works in millisecond electrical spikes for super fast, immediate actions, like diving out of the way of a bat. The hormonal system, on the other hand, relies on much slower, long-lasting chemical broadcast pumping through the bloodstream. Hormones prepare the body over hours or even days. For instance, when a subordinate African cichlid fish suddenly gets the chance to become the dominant male of his group, his brain releases hormones that literally change his physical skin colors and ramp up his aggressive behavior within minutes.
All right, Section 3, genes, environment, and development. Let's look at how the actual recipe of animal behavior is baked over a lifetime. You might wonder just how much of an animal's behavior is hardwired from birth. Well, look at Drosophila fruit flies. A single gene mutation, specifically in what's called the foraging gene, can completely overhaul this animal's entire behavioral strategy. Flies with the rover version of the gene, they wander far and wide looking for food, and they actually develop better short-term memory. But flies with the sitter version barely move from a single food patch, and instead, they develop better long-term memory. It's kind of incredible that one single gene can pivot an animal's entire approach to memory and survival.
So the crucial point is that genes are not destiny. They're more like an interactive recipe. The environment around them dynamically turns those genes on and off to create what we call phenotypic plasticity. Honeybees can alter their gene expression to switch from indoor nurses to outdoor foragers, depending on what the colony needs that day. Desert locusts, they literally transform from harmless, solitary green bugs into those massive dark swarms simply if they are physically touched too often in a crowded space. Even genetically identical mice will develop wildly different exploration behaviors based entirely on slight variations in their early social interactions.
And this interplay of genes and environment perfectly mirrors our own development. Just look at how remarkably similar songbirds and human babies are when acquiring communication. It's fascinating. Both of them have a highly sensitive developmental period early in life. Both absolutely must listen to adults to learn the specific sounds of their species. And both go through a babbling phase. Infants practice vocal babbling, while young birds practice what's called a subsong, before they eventually refine it into proper communication. They use incredibly similar developmental paths and brain organizations to pull this off. And the link goes all the way down to the exact DNA code. There is a gene known as FOXP2, and it is heavily involved in shaping the neural circuits required for vocal learning. Evolutionary biology shows us that the exact same genetic building blocks are co-opted across vastly different species to achieve these highly complex tasks. When we study how a tiny finch learns to sing, we are quite literally peering into the biological window of how human children learn to speak. Let's zoom back out for Section 4, Animal Minds and Culture. Time to look at memory, tool use, and cultural traditions. Okay, prepare to have your mind blown by this number. 30,000. A single bird, called Clark's nutcracker, spends its autumn hiving up to 30,000 pine seeds across an area of roughly 100 square miles. And it remembers their exact spatial locations up to 10 months later beneath the winter snow. So how does a bird pull this off? Well, the nutcracker has a highly enlarged hippocampus, which is the part of the brain responsible for spatial memory. And here is a deeply fascinating parallel. Humans do the exact same thing when we're pushed to our spatial limits. Trainee London taxi drivers have to memorize 25,000 complex city streets to pass their licensing exam. Brain scans actually show that the hippocampus of successful taxi drivers literally expands and grows physically larger after years of memorizing this vast map, exactly like that scatter-hoarding bird. This immense capacity to learn leads directly to true animal culture. Japanese macaque monkeys actually invented a technique to wash sandy sweet potatoes in the ocean, and they passed it down to their infants generation after generation. British birds learned how to pierce the foil of milk bottles delivered to doorsteps, a trick that spread like wildfire through social imitation. And New Caledonian crows intentionally fashion customized hook tools out of twigs to fish for grubs. It's a skill that actually varies by region, just like a human cultural tradition. Finally, we've arrived at Section 5, the language of survival. Let's decode how animals communicate incredibly complex, honest information to each other. In the animal kingdom, most communication is what scientists call an honest signal. Take the European toad. If a rival male approaches a mating pair, the male who's already there lets out a croak. A deep pitch physically signals a large toad, which successfully deters the attacker. But a high croak, that signals a small toad, practically inviting a fight. This is an honest signal because the physical size of the vocal cords literally cannot be faked. You can't pretend to be a massive, tough toad if you've only got tiny vocal cords. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the breathtaking geometry of the honeybee waggle dance. It's widely considered the most sophisticated communication in all non-primates. When a scout finds a great patch of flowers, she returns to the pitch-dark hive and dances in a figure-8 pattern. The exact angle of her center waggle against gravity tells the other bees the precise angle they need to fly relative to the sun. And the length of the waggle? That tells them precisely how far away the food is. She is literally communicating dynamic spatial coordinates in the dark. But perhaps the most profound communication we've ever observed comes from Alex, a famously brilliant African gray parrot who was studied for 30 years. Alex didn't just mimic sounds, he processed abstract concepts.
He could look at a tray of totally random items and identify objects by color, shape, and even what material they were made of. He completely understood bigger and smaller, same and different. He even spontaneously grasped the mathematical concept of none or zero, which is a massive cognitive leap that takes human toddlers years to master.
Which leads us to our final thought today. If a jewel wasp can act as a targeted neurosurgeon, if crows can craft intricate tools, if a parrot can grasp abstract math, and if our own complex vocal behaviors run on the exact same genetic machinery as a tiny songbird, are human minds entirely unique? Peeking behind the biological curtain reveals that the gap between animal biology and our own is remarkably narrow. We are far, far more connected to the rest of the animal kingdom than we probably ever imagined. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you on the next one.